in this video, we are going to talk about the active choices you make with your camera in terms of shutter speed and aperture. So picture yourself sitting there with your camera and you have to make a decision. Do I care more about showing motion, so having blurred motion or frozen motion, or do you not really care about motion, but you care much more about your depth of field? You care much more about whether the picture is completely in focus or mostly in focus, or just a part of it, a small part of it is in focus. Well, let's say, as you're standing there, that you're showing motion is much more important. So let's go up here. So if motion is more important, then the setting that you need to put on your camera is to put it to M for manual, or TV or S for shutter priority. S is what it would have on a Nikon. TV, which stands for time variable, is what you'd have on a Canon. Now let's say that you have a bunny rabbit jumping in front of you and you think it's really cute and you want to freeze that motion. So then you say to yourself, okay, I need to use a fast shutter speed. So you go up here and you say, okay, I need a fast shutter speed because I'm going to freeze my motion. Well, there's two ways to do that, either on the manual settings or the shutter priority settings. So if you put it on manual, you pick the shutter speed, so maybe 1/250th of a second, and then you'll have to use your light meter, which we talk about in another video, to choose the aperture that would work to give the camera enough light for a correct exposure. And exposure is something we talk about in another video as well. So that's manual. You pick the shutter speed and then you have to pick an aperture that provides enough light to the camera. If you want to do shutter priority, then, and it's on TV or S, then you pick that shutter speed, say 1/250th of a second, and the camera will pick the appropriate aperture for you to provide enough light for your camera sensor to make a correct exposure, a good balance of light and dark. All right, let's go back to here. Let's say that you decide, no, you know what? I like that bunny rabbit, but I kind of want it blurred. I want everybody to see that it's moving and everything. So that's the artistic choice I want to make. Well, then you need to use a slow shutter speed. And it works just the same way. If you're on manual, you choose a slow shutter speed, maybe 1/15th of a second. And then you'll have to pick an aperture using your light meter that gets you the correct exposure. Or if you just want to do part of it and have the camera do the rest of the work, you put it on TV or S, put it on 1/15th of a second, and then the camera will choose the correct exposure for you. Now let's go back to the beginning. What if you don't really care about motion? Maybe you're taking a picture of, a barn in a field and there's trees in the background and there's no wind that day and everything is very still. So there's nothing moving to begin with. So you don't really care about motion, but you care much more about either having that barn in focus and the trees out of focus, or having everything in focus. So then what you care about more is either shooting in manual or putting it on aperture priority. So that's AV on a Canon or A on a Nikon. Now let's say that you want shallow depth of field. You want the barn in focus. You want the background out of focus. All right, that's the choice you want to make, the active choice you want to make. Well, if you put it on M, you pick the aperture, and then you have to pick a shutter speed that will work to get the correct exposure. If you're a little bit lazy, like I tend to be sometimes, I'll shoot on AV because I have a Canon, and I'll pick the aperture that I want, but I let the camera pick the shutter speed for me. I always double check to make sure I'm okay with that shutter speed, but sometimes, yeah, I'll definitely shoot in AV on my Canon. Same thing with, let's say you want everything in focus. The trees in the background are beautiful. The light is hitting them in a gorgeous way. So you want them in focus and you want the barn in focus. Well, then you want to use a smaller aperture so you have a greater depth of field. So then on M, you would pick the aperture, something like f/22, And then you have to use the light meter and choose a shutter speed that it's going to give that correct exposure, that amount of light that your camera needs to have black blacks, white whites, and all of the gray tones in between. Or if you want, you can put it on AV or A. Pick that f22 or f16 or whatever aperture you think you want to use, and then the camera will pick the correct shutter speed to get that correct exposure. If you have any questions, please let me know. That's what I'm here for.